Welcome to episode 196 of Angela Watson's Truth for Teachers. I'm your host, Angela Watson, and I'm here to speak life, encouragement, and truth into the minds and hearts of educators and get you energized for the week ahead. Today, I'm sharing some aspects of schooling that have actually gotten better during emergency distance learning and some thoughts about some emerging best practices that we might want to consider for next school year. Visit truthforteachers.com to get the transcript or find our Truth for Teachers podcast community on Facebook. ViewSonic has been dedicated to being part of the educational community for over 30 years, and they want to help the millions of teachers and students finding themselves trying to learn from home. They're currently offering free access to their MyViewBoard digital whiteboarding software, giving teachers all the distance learning tools they need to continue to conduct classes. And now MyViewBoard includes new features designed just for virtual classrooms. Check it out and get access today at myviewboard.com/distance-learning. I also want to tell you about how to provide distance learning and earn graduate level credits at the same time. Take a look at Teachers Learning Center, aka TLC. Educators from all 50 states go to TLC for their professional development and graduate credit needs. They're accredited nationwide, and they offer a wide range of unique courses, including how to design an online classroom and other tech-related pedagogy. You control your schedule, and there's no travel needed. Go to tlcgraduatecredits.com/Angela. That's tlcgraduatecredits.com/Angela to get your coupon code now. I recently asked teachers on my Facebook page to share some of the positive outcomes that they've seen with teaching remotely in crisis. I wanted to know, is there any aspect of your work with students that you're liking better now? Are there any approaches that are actually working more effectively for some kids than our usual ways of doing face-to-face instruction? The replies that I got were fascinating, and I'm going to share some of the overarching themes here with you. But I want to start with a response from a teacher named Mar because what she said really touched me. She said, "I'm really enjoying doing remote teaching. Of course I miss my kiddos, but now I get to truly concentrate on content, which is my comfort zone anyway. When I'm helping a student, they have my full and undivided attention. I don't have to worry about the 5 other kids with their hands up. I get to give much more meaningful feedback than I ever did in a normal class. I have so much more time for grading. I have time to create engaging, content-based, meaningful lessons. It's going to be hard to go back to the old ways when this is all over. This is my dream job. Does this make me a bad teacher?" So I want to say first off, if you're feeling like that, no, you are definitely not a bad teacher for enjoying this new way of interacting with your students. Amid all of the new problems and the existing problems that have been made worse by the pandemic, there are also lots of bright spots. There are results that we're getting right now that we probably wouldn't be getting if the school year had progressed as normal. I also want to add that many students are happier right now too. Not all of our kids loved going to school. Not all of our kids loved their teachers or miss them now. Not all of our kids found school to be a safe and loving place where they were seen and valued. Learning from home has been an improvement for them. And I'm not just talking about kids in affluent families. Many students whose home language or home culture is devalued by the school system are thriving right now in ways that the school system is not designed to measure. So let's challenge the idea here that pandemic pedagogy is universally worse for kids and teachers, or is universally more stressful or more difficult. Some folks are having the opposite experience. And even those who prefer the face-to-face teaching process are still experiencing some positive outcomes. So here's what I want you to do with this episode. I want you to listen for things that you agree with here and the benefits from remote teaching that you are also seeing. And think about ways to document these benefits. Consider it virtual classroom-based action research. Observe and document which practices are getting good results, or maybe even better results than your face-to-face instruction. You don't have to figure out now how to carry this over to next school year, but having some sort of even an informal record of what you're seeing to prove the benefits of now versus the traditional ways of doing school may be helpful to you later in advocating for permanent change. Now, if that feels overwhelming, then just pick one thing. What's one thing that you are doing differently right now that's working better for you and your students? One thing that you might be able to use in future school years. Keep evidence of that. Experiment with it a lot and learn what works and what doesn't. Now, with that, let me share some of the benefits that other teachers have noticed to help get you thinking. Keep in mind, you probably won't observe all of these benefits. And in fact, something that is improved for one teacher may have gone the opposite direction for you. That's absolutely fine. We are not in competition with one another here to have the best pandemic teaching experience ever. Just notice the things that are working well, or that maybe could be working well, and see where that observation leads you in your practice. Here's the first thing that I'm hearing from some teachers that is working better for them during this crisis distance learning. Some teachers are finding an improvement in the ability to offer more virtual tutoring for kids who need help. A teacher named Maria said, "I have a virtual tutoring sign up for my kids via Google Forms. When a student is signed up, I send them an email with a Google Hangouts link. They click on it and we meet. Some never sign up, but some sign up every day. I would like to continue to offer maybe once weekly tutoring for those who want it. It's mostly just kids who want help with homework, but it's great for them to take the initiative if they're confused." Now, presumably, virtual tutoring sessions is something that many teachers don't typically offer because of time constraints. It would have to be done unpaid on their evenings and weekends, and lesson planning and grading are already competing for that time. But let's stay in this mode of simply observing, documenting, and envisioning. Maybe this virtual tutoring is something that you finally have time to try. If so, document the outcomes you see, even if they're subjective or related to soft skills or socio-emotional benefits. Fine-tune your system now and learn how to really get the most bang for your buck in terms of these virtual tutoring sessions. Experiment with different time slots, different lengths of time, different instructional approaches. Maybe next school year, you'll be able to identify something else that you're doing to help your struggling students that's less effective than this. And then you can reduce or maybe even remove that from your schedule to build in virtual tutoring instead. See where I'm going with this? Okay, here's the second area that some teachers have said is better. Some are saying they're doing a better job making accommodations for students with IEPs. Now, this is one in which I think most teachers that I've heard from feel like crisis distance learning has been worse for their kids. So if you're floundering in this area, please don't feel alone. I do want to share a story with you that might give you some hope and some inspiration. There's a teacher named Marilyn who said this: "Online instruction allows my students near instant access to read aloud technology that they don't often ask for in the classroom. They're also able to adjust color and size on the text that's not possible with standard handouts. The Gen Ed teachers are commenting on how much the kids have grown in the last 2 weeks. I'm like, these accommodations have been there, but the kids don't always like to talk in large groups, and they need the extra time to process that the virtual setting is giving them." In terms of specifics, she said, "Our district is using the Microsoft Teams platform. Individual teachers can load assignments into it as Google Docs, and with a right click that allows most devices to turn on the read aloud function. Not all devices, still working on that," she says. "Other kids are turning on immersive readers in Word, and my students with dyslexia can use the dictate function to record their thoughts. We also use Imagine Math and Reading, where students designated with IEPs can click the language button and get speak options. For our younger students, we're using starfall.com, which provides full access to video learning as support for their handouts." Now, that's a lot of information. Let me tell you what I'm extrapolating from this in terms of benefits to students in special ed programs. It is not necessarily the case that these resources and accommodations weren't available before the pandemic. Most of them were. But sometimes SPED students are reluctant to utilize those accommodations in front of their peers in the classroom, or they may have to take turns using a limited number of devices, or sometimes the classroom is too busy and too noisy for them to be able to concentrate. And so some of them are actually doing a lot better now that they're learning from home. Let me lead into another benefit that a number of teachers are noticing, which is that students are less distracting and disruptive to one another's learning. Kristen says, I have one student who I can never get to do his ELA program on the iPad in class because he's so distracted. But he's rocking it at home. It might be all the breaks. Being forced to learn this technology will open up many more options for me next year. I love that reflection. Not only are there fewer distractions for this student when not in a room with 30 other kids, but the student is also getting more breaks, which might be what's leading to better concentration. This would be an excellent area to conduct action research and document the changes and the progress you see in students so you can try to figure out what to attribute that positive outcome to. It might not be what we're assuming here. Then you'll be able to look for ways to carry it over into next school year. Rebecca has pointed out the reduced disruptions and the less distractions as well. She says, my attention can now be on everyone instead of one or two kids who have big behavior needs and no support. It is such a relief. And Natalia, along with many other teachers, are singing the praises of the mute button on Zoom. Obviously, we are laughing about being able to instantly create a silent classroom in this virtual environment and how awesome that is. But on a serious note, the constant chatter and interruptions in class is not just annoying for teachers. Kids who need quiet in order to concentrate dislike all those distractions of the classroom too. Many kids will do far better quality work when they aren't physically surrounded by their peers. This really makes me wonder how virtual learning might be a better approach next year for projects and tasks that require a lot of deep thinking and creativity. This leads us to another benefit, which is that quiet and shy kids are now more likely to ask questions and participate. Clarissa reports that kids who might not ask questions in class are messaging me with their questions. And Angela says, I've noticed my quiet students are starting to shine. They are participating in Zoom. They're asking questions. They're offering ideas. Vanessa says, I'm doing a Google Forms check-in with each of my kids at the beginning and end of each day and asking socio-emotional questions, as well as just random informational ones, like something nice they've done for a family member or what they did for exercise during their midday break. It's really nice getting individual answers from each student instead of just a few of the more vocal students tending to dominate. Now, there's no doubt that some students are more comfortable participating from behind a screen rather than face-to-face. We've known that as educators for some time. Ed tech proponents have been sharing this with us. And right now, my mind is just spinning with ways that we can leverage that now that we're seeing it on a larger scale and so many teachers are able to experience it themselves for the first time. A similar benefit here is that some teachers are finding better student participation and work completion levels. Rebecca says, I've had students that haven't turned in work all semester now participating online. And I teach at a one-to-one device school, and I actively use our LMS. It's blowing my mind. I have not changed my curriculum at all. It's all still posted in our LMS. It's all still submitted back there. The only difference is now it's all homework because I'm anti-homework and I gave them plenty of class time to do everything. Now, let me acknowledge that many teachers are seeing lower participation levels for a wide variety of reasons. That is to be expected. But I think that Rebecca's experience is something really interesting to think about. Why might work completion be better right now for some kids in some schools? I'll hypothesize that some of them want to interact with their friends, and virtual meetings are a rare opportunity to see all of their classmates. I'll also hypothesize that some may be craving normalcy or structure right now. And I think all of them have fewer fun things that are competing for their time and attention. But what Rebecca mentioned about kids not having to do 6 hours of classwork in school and homework in the evenings got me thinking as well. Her students are not getting more or less work right now. What they're getting is more autonomy and more breaks. They don't have to get up so early to go to school and sit through 6 hours of classes and then come home and do more work on top of everything else they're juggling. They have more choice over when to work. They can go to the bathroom freely. They can eat when they're hungry, and so on. All of that is something to consider for sure. Another area that's been improved for some teachers is they are finding their kids benefit from having fewer classroom time wasters, fluff, and time spent waiting around for the rest of the class. I think about this one a lot, particularly for the elementary level, where going to the bathroom and getting a drink can take 15 minutes out of the school day, sometimes twice a day, because the whole class has to make a trip at once. Going to the bathroom and getting a drink at home takes a fraction of that amount of time. Instead of kids sitting for 5 minutes in class for everyone to pass in their papers and get out materials for the next activity, you can tell the class, take a 5-minute break and then meet back up again. They can stand, stretch, take care of their basic needs, check their phone, and not feel like they're just sitting and waiting passively for everyone else. Think about all of the additional time that we've gotten back during the school day. We don't have to spend time waiting for the class to line up quietly, or bring in the recess equipment, get out supplies, clean up materials, and so on. Either those elements of the day are cut out, or they can happen without the teacher being required to manage the whole process. And the lack of time wasters can be true for instructional time as well. A teacher named Dem says, "My kids love that we are getting to the point of the topic without all the required extras of the classroom. It's like, here's the lesson, here's the essential learning, here's the higher learning assignment." After all, a lesson that might take 30 minutes to teach face-to-face might only be a 10-minute recorded video or screencast if there's no interruptions. Kids can watch the lesson quickly and use the remainder of their virtual class time in ways that are valuable to them. So lots to think about here in terms of flipped instruction, blended learning. How can we really leverage this so that we're not having so much wasted class time? Another benefit is that teachers are having more intentional opportunities to check for understanding. Jean says, "I have come to realize how important it is to do understanding checks and how many kids aren't really getting it during a lecture. I do not like this manner of teaching, but it is making me a better teacher." And I think that makes total sense. When you're standing in front of the classroom, it's easy to focus on what you need to say rather than whether kids are really understanding what you're saying. There's so much pressure to keep everyone on task and get through the lesson, right? To cover all the material before the bell rings. And this leaves many teachers only checking for understanding at the end. It's like, let me race through, teach everything I need to teach, and then we'll check for understanding. But time progresses differently in distance learning. There's less classroom management happening and more time to check in with kids. You can stop more and give more practice work without worrying about losing kids' attention or the momentum of the lesson. Now, this is going to look different according to how you're doing emergency distance learning right now, and according to your subject matter and student demographics, your teaching style. There's many other factors that will impact this. But this is an interesting aspect to experiment with too, isn't it? How many times have you marched all the way through a lesson without realizing that your kids aren't getting it? How often are you assuming that because they're not asking questions, they understand? Teaching in this new way can shed light on all kinds of important realizations like this. Some teachers are also reporting that they're able to give better and faster feedback on student work. For some teachers, this might be because they're not responsible for live instruction 6 hours a day anymore, which leaves a lot more time for individual conferences and helping kids reflect on their work. Kelly says, "I am giving so much more immediate feedback on their writing because I can." For other teachers, better and faster feedback may be due to the tech tools that they're using, which can simplify and speed up the process considerably. Given the amount of time teachers typically spend on grading and assessment, this is an area to watch for sure. And for still other teachers, the better feedback might be due to more effective and uninterrupted differentiation. This too is a benefit that I'm hearing from teachers. You might be used to teaching, let's say, reading groups, or maybe you have tier intervention groups with between maybe 4 to 8 kids, but you're also trying to ensure that another 24 plus kids are on task in the classroom doing something different, doing some sort of independent work. It is extremely challenging in almost any classroom to try to teach a small group with the other kids in the room. So being able to meet with your small group via Microsoft Teams or some other video conferencing with just the kids in that group while the rest are offline, that is a huge relief to many teachers right now. Similarly, being able to meet with one child virtually rather than having the entire class there while you're trying to offer support to this one kid, well, that can be a breath of fresh air too. Additionally, for the teachers who are not required to give live instruction for multiple hours of the day, the majority of teaching can now be done in small groups. Kids can sign up for the support slots when they need them or do the work on their own instead. A certain skill may be taught to the whole class, and then the following day, enrichment and review classes can be offered to small groups according to who needs what. Effective differentiation is one of the biggest challenges for most teachers in a general, typical day, in terms of finding an approach that is effective for kids and manageable for the teacher. Differentiation is extremely time-consuming. But if you're not responsible for teaching 6 face-to-face hours a day, you can use that time to plan differentiated lessons and deliver more individualized instruction. There is definitely something to be learned from this time in order to make next year better. Another big benefit that I'm hearing from teachers is they're feeling a closer bond with their students, and in some cases, even better communication and bonding with parents. Now, I know many families have not checked in with virtual school at all, and their teachers are deeply worried. Some of these kids are struggling with this mightily, so I don't want to overlook that in any way. You will probably not be able to contact all your kids or connect with them in all the ways you ordinarily would. But there are some teachers who are finding this new format to be an improvement, particularly in schools where the academic expectations right now are more relaxed compared to how they normally would be at this time of year. Sarah says, "I feel like I know these kids so much better now. We've been doing Hangouts 3 times a week, meaning on Google Hangouts, and they just like to sit and ask each other questions." Taylor says, "I read short stories as episodes to the kids every night, and it has really built a stronger bond. They love it when I get really into the story and they beg me to read more." Personally, I am optimistic that this forced time of finding other ways to connect with kids and build relationships will show us new ways to strengthen teacher-student and family relationships. Some teachers are saying this is the most contact they've had with many parents all year. Madeline says, "Parents see how important it is for their children to stay on task and how the data that I've sent home backs up what they're now experiencing." This situation is giving many parents a much deeper understanding of what their kids are being taught and their children's work habits and personalities, their kids' strengths and weaknesses, and so on. We're also seeing better tech integration and innovation among teachers. Nilda says, "I have a new understanding of Microsoft Teams and other technology out there. I am a techie, but this has broadened even my horizons." And Patty says, "I learned how to use Loom for pre-recorded ELA lessons. I read aloud stories, I discuss pictures, and I ask questions. I do a screen share combined with face to camera so my students can see digital book pages and my face in the corner. I think next year I may use this to provide at-home support in lieu of homework for review and reinforcement. I made all my recordings on Saturday for the week, and then I just shared out my links on Monday." And finally, we're seeing more awareness of and accommodations for inequities in our systems. I've seen some commentary on social media about how grading students on work that is done during emergency distance learning is simply grading privilege. You are assessing students' access to a safe home environment and their access to Wi-Fi, digital devices, time freedom for focusing on school rather than having to support the family financially or watch younger siblings. The truth, though, is that we've always been grading privilege. School buildings and school resources can help mitigate the inequities, but they don't eliminate them altogether. And schools in more affluent areas tend to have more and better resources for the kids anyway. So it's not like all our schools were equally funded and all children had equal opportunities before this. What's happening is the pandemic is shining a brighter spotlight on these inequities and the challenges of making sure that all kids have the support and resources needed to learn. Problems that were more easily ignored before COVID, are now demanding solutions. We can't look away anymore. We can't ignore it like we were before. And that's a good thing. Many schools are innovating in this area for the first time or taking innovation to a new level in terms of making devices and assignments accessible for all their students. And of course, there is a lot of work still to be done here, but there's so much potential for good to come from this. If we can go the extra mile to support kids and families now, we can do that always. I hope this episode has given you some encouragement that as challenging as this time is, and with all the drawbacks that there may be, you are on the forefront of exploring new and better ways of learning. Notice what is working well. Document this experience. Conduct some action research to prove which things are better for your kids so you can keep doing them and keep getting those same benefits in the future. It's not going to be easy. It's going to be worth it.